Hello and welcome back to Family Dynamics. This is episode 2, part 2 of the diagnosis. So we had a bit of feedback on our first episode and I just want to address that first. Basically we used a couple of terms that not like normal people wouldn't have used. For instance, NG and BiPAP machine. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of people are going to see an NG and not a lot of people are going to have used a BiPAP machine. I did actually use an NG, but I didn't use an NG. My daughter had an NG when she was first born, Jane, but I didn't actually know what it was called because her blood sugars were low, so it was only used for one night. We stayed the night in the hospital, we checked her a handful of times. This is when I was with my ex-partner. And she was fine the next day and it was never used or mentioned, or I never seen one again. So would you like to explain a little bit about what an NG and a BiPAP machine are, just for our listeners?
Yeah, an NG is literally just a tube down the nose that helps you administer food, which is milk essentially.
So when you say down the nose, you mean down the nose, throat, and to the stomach?
You pass the tube down the nose via throat down to the stomach. Yeah. And you'd have to test it to see if it's actually in the stomach with pH strips. With the pH strips to see if it's actually, stomach acid.
How do they test it? How do they get a pH strip?
So you put a syringe, you screw a syringe at the end of the NG where you give the medicine. Pull back.
Ooh.
Where you get, but it wasn't pleasant for Leo.
Doesn't sound pleasant.
No. And as you pull back, you would...
Todd.
That's our dog. Sorry, he's playing with a toy. Family life. You'd pull back, you'd get the stomach contents, essentially like stomach acid, and if you didn't get stomach contents and the pH should be, I think it's either too high or too low, it's not in the stomach. There's been risks where it's actually been in the lung. So you've got to, and if it is in the lung, you pull it back out, you pass it back in again, and then do the pH strip again. It's like a weird strip of colours, and you syringe out the contents on that strip to test the levels that it was in the tummy. So
No. The BiPAP machine?
The BiPAP machine is helps you breathe at night. So with Leo, with his weak muscles, he would struggle to breathe by himself. So when he'd be settled down in his sleep, he'd be in a deep sleep, so he'd stop breathing. Yeah. And because of his weak muscles, it didn't help. So the BiPAP machine gave him the air to breathe because it'd be giving him breaths itself.
I'm just gonna.
So the BiPAP machine is a breathing machine. So when Leo would be asleep, he'd struggle to breathe. So what he'd need is, because of his weak muscles, he'd fall into deep sleep and forget to breathe essentially, and it'd wake himself up and he'd never feel rested. So what we had to do, this machine gave those breaths so he could have a restful night.
Non-invasive ventilator, basically.
Non-invasive, and ventilator's another topic to talk about. It's
we'll get there when we get there, but it's just the same job.
Now, but to the questions on that feedback from the people who've listened to our podcast, that's what those were. I think gastrostomy, because I know I brought that up in the previous episode, where it's a surgical procedure where they do an incision in your tummy area and they shove it, it's like a weird line tube and a balloon inside your stomach. Yeah, it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. No, I can see in your face that it's like, oh god.
I'm squeamish. I'm very squeamish, guys.
Yeah, squishy insides. That's what you think. And they put like a button inside. So rather than the nose, which as I expressed in the other one, it's not good long term. It damages your face, damages the skin. You're more prone to chest infections because the bacteria lingers on the NG, because that's a direct direct view for the bacteria to grow straight down from your nose into your gut, which is just, it's not good long term. That's why they do the gastros. But the gastros is basically like an NG,
just shorter.
But shorter, it's direct at the tummy. It's you don't have to test it with the pH strips because you know it's in the tummy, and it's less uncomfortable for the person who needs an NG.
So
long
just
term.
I've got a small question on the NG. Did you ever have to put one of them in yourself?
An NG? No, actually no.
Oh, okay.
No.
I was just curious because I know sometimes it come out and stuff. I was just wondering whether you had to put one back, whether that's something you'd be trained in.
No, I mean, he had catheters which did suction by nose, because it's like catheter again. It's like a tube but it's like instead of giving breaths, it suctions out mucus and very not pleasant.
Like a little snot hoover,
yeah,
basically.
it's like a snot hoover.
It's another thing I don't like.
Again, it's a suction machine, and I did test that on myself. I put that in my nose to know it was not nice. It's very scratchy, it hurts. That's why be very gentle when you use them, because it's not comfortable. I could see why a lot of the time Leah was not happy giving suction, but
she's threatened me with it a few times when I've been ill. I've been like, not a chance. Not a chance. So shall we move on to like how things have progressed now, how Leo's gone to?
Well, from 2014 to 2016, it was the hardest. Was the hardest as father of Leo and Sarah, which we haven't brought up yet. But between 2014 and 2016, I also became pregnant. Our family dynamic did get more complicated, finding out that I was pregnant with another child at the end of 2015. And then Leo took a turn to the worse at this point as well, around the pregnancy, in his health, and was on path with needing more support. This is when it became more the medical equipment and the progress of the disease got worse, sadly. On top of that as well, during all this, my ex-partner was involved with an accusation with the police, which later turned out to be true, involving his sexual preferences, which that in another topic we will talk on this podcast at a later date, not right now, but during the question of the time in hospital and the progression, there was a lot of stuff going on with the situation. It was not only, sadly.
So moving away from that, what was life like for you in the hospital? How were you coping?
I would say a bit of it. Wasn't coping some days, and I was coping some days. When I was pregnant, I had to go through a process of a CVS. So it's where, again, this was while I was in the hospital with Leo. So this is while Leo had a chest infection that was quite prone and quite happening in Manchester. We'd go straight to Manchester and we'd have these constant chest infections. Like even when he got diagnosed at 5 months, we'd still be coming back. Again, we've expressed this in the previous episode. But at this point, when I was pregnant, around this time, they needed to do a CVS. So it's where people seem to think when you say CVS, it's amniotic fluid. This one's, it's a lot more painful, I would say. It's where they put an enlarged needle inside your placenta, and they take the sample by suctioning it. It's not nicely suctioned out a piece of your placenta, but they need to test that placenta to see if you are a carrier of Pompe disease, because my morals on this is if you know you've got a child that's got Pompe, I wasn't going to continue the pregnancy, especially at 10 weeks. It's still very young, early stages of the pregnancy.
Well, you already had one child who had the condition who was worsening.
He was getting worse at that point, and I don't agree with knowing you've got this genetic disorder and putting your unborn child who has not even had a chance to start life, you're already, as morbid as it sounds, it's pretty much like not a very good life. And that's why if it came back with Pompe, I would sadly, not an easy thing to do, terminate the pregnancy, but luckily it wasn't the case. We have Sarah now anyway, so it came back as she didn't have Pompe, which is a really relieving thing. But during that, a lot of the complexities was with the ex-partner during the hospital. I did feel alone. I felt when we were in the hospital, it was just me and Leo against the world and the baby in my belly. Again, it was quite difficult because you had no one to talk to, really, like a real human contact. The only contact you had was a nurse or a doctor, and sometimes the parents were there, sometimes they were obviously in their own struggles and their dynamics, which you respectfully understand. You have the odd conversation with the parent, but it's quite isolating, I would say. But me and Leo made the best of a poop situation, so we would go on walks, you know, on the ward, and try and stay focused and have a routine in the hospital. That was my way to function. Is even when I was staying in the Mac house, because at this point it was about nearly a year I was staying in Manchester. I didn't even go home once. I was stuck in a hotel room for a year whilst my son was in a metabolic ward, which was quite complicated. Sometimes he'd end up in ICU because he'd have this severe chest infection, and we'd be back and forth.
So we were quite lonely in the hospital then.
Yeah.
That's about the time we started talking, wasn't it?
A little bit then. I mean, like, not really. Before then, this was still quite early stages, because it got to a point where they changed his weekly treatments, enzyme replacement therapy, to 2 weekly. And the problem with that was there was always a concern that the 2 weekly made them worse. That was a concern with other parents, that as soon as he went to 2 weekly, the child just completely deteriorated and got worse instantly. And lo and behold, as soon as they moved Leo to 2 weekly, that week he ended up in ICU.
Yeah.
It like an ICU was like intubated, a breathing tube. He needed a machine to help him breathe day and night, not just the night time. So that progressed, and then it got to the point where he was needing a BiPAP every single day, not just nighttime. He was needing it in the day. So me and the doctors were having that awkward, not very nice conversation of, we might need to do a surgery procedure, which is what they called it, which we know now is a tracheostomy, because your child is needing the BiPAP machine all day.
When you say like a surgery procedure, where do they do this procedure?
So it'd been Manchester. This was all.
No, I mean physically, how do they do this procedure to the child?
Oh, it's another incision in the stoma. It's like between your. It's like between your.
Kind of there at your wishbone there.
Can you see that? Feel that circle there between your neck and
just sort of at the wishbone.
Yeah, not at the wishbone, but a bit above it. It's, trachea. It's where the trachea is. And basically they just do an incision, put a tube in and secure it. But it was quite horrific because we had a bit of issues with the hospital. They refused to, because they're saying he needs it, but then wasn't actually booking him in for surgery. They were literally, it was weeks upon weeks, like, when are we having this serious surgery that we need? Because again, at the time, I was against it. I didn't want my child to have a tube. I saw it as his life is over if he's got a tracheostomy. Like, he's going to become a vegetable. That's it. That was my, at the time, mindset. That was my concern, is what quality of life does my child have being on a tracheostomy. So I was against it at first. But as I was crying a lot, we said no at first. And then as I thought more on it, Leo was still mobile, still moving his head, still full of beans, but he was obviously working harder breathing. And his still hopefulness with his movements, with him, from a logical perspective, him still moving and moving his arms and communicating and being all there and keeping his head up to some extent. And his mental head was still all there. I went, screw it, let's just try this, let's do the tracheostomy, because the other specialists were going, it'll be okay, it'll be fine. They were giving me the positives, and they did say there were cons to having the tracheostomy, so there is a high risk that you won't be able to talk, so you won't hear your child's voice again. That was one of the things that I was like, no, not having the trachea, because what parent wants to hear that? You're never going to hear your child's voice again. That's quite...
Yeah, it's quite sad.
Yeah, that's not... It was a really hard thing. Or he dies, essentially, is what they said. It's either that or he dies. You weigh up these, and because he wasn't going to survive on that BiPAP anymore, because that was just, again, like the MG, it was a temporary fix, but he needed more of a permanent procedure to...
Yeah, keep him alive.
More invasive, though. But we agreed, we got it done. But my issue was the hospital really dragged their feet with getting the procedure done, it got to the point where, but when is he actually going to have this surgery? When is the surgery actually going to happen? And it got to the point that they were like, well, he's in ICU, we've got him a bed, he's ready for surgery, but just wait until he gets worse. It's like, why wait until he gets worse? Because they were quite happy with how he was. He was like, oh, he's doing great, he's on his BiPAP machine all day, but he's moving, he's really good health. I was like, why are we waiting until he's worse? It got to a point where me and the physiotherapist were literally pulling out green, thick mucus plugs out of his mouth, and there was blood at the end of it. It was just quite horrific. It was a fight just to stabilise him. But these doctors that were coming in and out, and sadly surgeons were all coming in and out and going, he's fine. It's like, but me and the physios and the nurses have just been working hard on him in ICU and got him stable, and you've just come in for 5 minutes and went, he's fine. We'll do it next week. But it'd always be delayed. But it got to the point where finally they did do the procedure. It was the most terrifying thing in my life, because at this point I was going in for a gender, finding out the gender of the baby. At this point I think I was about 16 weeks at this point, and nearly 16, 17 weeks, and we'll find out the gender of the baby. And this midwife was like, oh, so excited. It's like, I'm not really, and my son right now has just been put in surgery upstairs, and I'm down here trying to find out the gender of my baby inside me, and I'm absolutely, this is not, it was very hurdle of emotions, didn't know how to process it. Everything was happening too quick for me to adapt. For some reason I had this energy to just focus on this, focus on the health of Sarah, and obviously finding out what her gender was, which we know it's Sarah, so it's a girl. And then focus on the next thing. We waited in the waiting room to obviously see how the procedure went. And it was only 45 minutes, the procedure. That was really quick, to be honest. But I remember when he first came out, and there was like weird threads attached to it. So the tracheostomy was in, and they had these weird, it's like threads sewn into his flesh on his chest. There was a lot of blood, and when you see this, it looked like you'd been in the war, like you'd been in a proper. There was so much blood, so much weird things shown in threads sewn into his flesh, but that was to keep the tracheostomy in place. So obviously the poor kid didn't knock it, or it was already an open wound, so we didn't want it to get irritated. But from a first time parent who's never seen this, no one's never prepped you for this, no one said this is what it was traumatizing to see your child in that state. And it was, the main thing I saw was Leo immediately opened his eyes and he was dancing and wiggling, and I was like, oh my god, mate, you are a bundle of joy. You've just gone through hell, and
you're fine with it. You're
smiling. You're like, if you can do that, I can move forward, and we're going to stay positive and strong. Because there was instantly, I mean, like, he is the inspiration, to be honest. He is the inspiration of staying positive. He is why I stayed strong, because every hurdle he'd hit, he'd aced it, and he'd go, screw that, I'm me, I'm going to fight this, this is me, I'm Leo. And it was just, that attitude made me go, oh my god, he's only 1.5 years old, and he has dealt with the most rubbish cards, and he is still fighting. So absolutely inspiration to me.
So moving on from life in the hospital, obviously we might touch more on that in the future, but this is something we can both talk a little bit on. But what's it like living with a 24-hour care staff?
It has its ups and downs. It's a bit complicated, because again, there's no guidebook on letting strangers live in your house, essentially, because we have 24-hour carers, so we have day and night, 7 days a week. It's not...
There's no privacy.
No, there's no privacy. But they are a massive help with the support. I am grateful for what they do, because if it wasn't for them, if we didn't have staff, it means I'd be doing all the night shifts, basically awake all day, all night, because you can't leave. No. At this point now, to 2023 now, Leo, his health has deteriorated. He's more non-mobile now. He's still on the tracheostomy. but his lungs, the physical aspect of his lungs, the amount of chest infections he's had, it's weakened him over the years, and then other complications with the disease like the bent spine, the osteoporosis with the brittle bones, all that has contributed towards the further deterioration in himself. So the care is very important because he does need it for the day. It's changed because of his deterioration. It's become more full on as he's gotten more. The disease has progressed more. But with the care staff, it's been. I mean, they're a good support, but I've learnt the hard way sometimes with some carers with professionalism and not getting too close with, like, you know, friendships and it becoming a bit unprofessional.
Yeah.
Which we've, you know, yeah, a bit difficult with that, I think. And learning to move forward and we have moved forward, and we've, you know, with the care staff, but they've been, more than anything, I am still grateful, as much as they've had a bit of faults with them. I mean, like, there's one occasion, I think it was 2020, where we lost Leo, and it was because I hit the doorbell at 6 a.m. I've got a doorbell in our bed, and the doorbell went off, and we came running down, and it was literally corpse. He was white. He was about.
Yeah.
He was 6 at this 7 at this point. He was at 7-year-old at this point, I think.
No, 6.
He was 6.
6, yeah.
And his eyes were wide open. They were black. His mouth was open. He was. Yeah. You were there.
I remember it. I thought he's gone. There's no reversing this. This is too far. And to be honest, the reason why he was almost gone is negligence.
It's worse than it was. I mean, you know, at this point, Sarah, my daughter at this point, and again we have another child called Eric with Graham right now.
Yeah.
They were all coming into his room going, breakfast time, and Leo was not.
Yeah.
They walked into that as well.
And I've just seen that. I'm making them Weetabix like it's a normal day.
Get out the room. So it was that whole, oh my God, get the kids out the room. And what I noticed with this carer was they were faffing around with this oxygen tank. They were just focused on that oxygen tank, and it was just, right, look at the child, he's gone. Why is he gone? I was just shut down. But the first thing I did was check the airway. So I went straight to Leo, looked at his, you know, his stoma where the trachei's put in, the hole.
Yeah.
His trachea popped out. The one thing you are trained to do with anything, not even a trachea, but even with these type of carers, was check the airway. Is it compromised? His trachea popped out, and the person who was on that day, I'm not going to say the gender either, the person where he got to that point, his trachea popped out, and they didn't think to check there, because he was, at this point, he was prone to tracheas popping out. He was prone to that. That wasn't the first time that it's done that. So my first initial response was check his airway.
It's worth pointing out this person was brand new, first shift alone.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, they just panicked.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what to do, which is the worst thing you can do. You can't panic in the moment.
No, because that person was just faffing over oxygen that wouldn't even get to him anyway, because the trachea wasn't in. Anyway, as soon as I realised that he's dead because of you, there was rage with this person. But instead of lashing out, poked it back in and screamed at the carer, bag him, now we need to bag him. So as we were bagging him, he was still non-responsive, he wasn't coming back, we were calling the ambulance.
I think this is another one of those moments where we just need to take a moment and explain what bagging is.
Sorry, yeah, bagging is how to describe it? So it's pretty much, it's again like a BiPAP, but you're manually pushing air into the lungs. So you're giving breaths.
It's like giving mouth to mouth, but you're using a bag to create the air pressure. So it sits over the mouth, or in Leo's case, in the trachea.
Yeah, so we've got an adapter, which is like, it's called a giraffe neck, with a ventilator that you attach onto a bagging, because usually they do have baggings for, you know, normal people who need to be bagged and pass through oxygen. But it's just a different adaptation. It does the same thing. That's the main thing, is you manually pass air through them, and we were pushing through oxygen, but Leo was quite stiff. So when I was looking at him, I was like, you are stiff. What? You're white and your eyes are wide open, but there's nothing there. You're vacant. And it was the most... Me and the carer were crying on each other while we were bagging him, and I was calling the ambulance, begging them to come, you know, hurry up. And we were just essentially trying to get him back, but grieving at the same time, being like, oh my God. But then it was really bizarre, because he went, all of a sudden, I could see vague nostril flares flaring up. Then his whole body went orange, blue, red, purple, orange, red, blue, purple, and it blotchy, and it was going through these colours, and his whole body was going
the oxygen back trying to circulate around.
Yeah, it was insane, and I was like, keep going, we've got him back, and he did come back, but he was obviously not very conscious in there, so we ran out and had to run to the train station, get a defibrillator, stuck it all on ready for him, because the ambulance was like, get a defibrillator. So
that was me running to our local train station and running back. I am not a runner. I mean, I'm not an unhealthy person, but my God, that almost killed me.
it was horrific. And you know, as Leo was coming back, his eyes rolled up, and he was there, and he'd briefly be there for a second, and every time he'd come back, he'd roll the eyes back of his head. I'd end up slapping his face, going, get back up, you know, and he'd be like, Mum, oh God, Mum, okay, whoa, because every time I'd yell Leo, he'd be like, Mum, it'd be like, you could see it in his face, like, whoa. The ambulance came, and he stabilised, but upon that type, again, this is the subject on the care team, I let this person stay on the team, because in all honesty, that was probably one of the most worst mistakes that person could have experienced. And it was not malicious, it was negligent, I will say that. I mean, if I lost him, it would have been a different story. It would have been worse, and I would have not as been as...
The fact is, that person learned their lesson like the hard way, and they actually has gone on to become one of Leo's better carers.
Yeah, this person is fab. You know, we have a good relationship. I have a good relationship with this person.
Yeah, I don't think we can really hold blame against someone for a mistake. I mean, it's a horrific mistake, but...
But again, would it have been a different story if he did die? I mean,
well, obviously, because you'd have had to hold on to that grief. I mean, obviously, it would have changed us and that person for life.
More than what I'm talking about is that relationship with that person. It would have been different. I wouldn't have been so understanding. Yeah, I would have lost my wig, essentially. But you know,
I do remember you shouting and screaming at them during that time.
What do you mean?
You were obviously angry. You were shouting. You were screaming in their face during it. I don't think you were taking that on board, but they were doing what they were told. I think they understood why they were getting shouted and screamed at. It was quite aggressive, and honestly, Shannon was an absolute hero in that moment, because if she had not been in the house, then Leo would not be here, because I seen him and thought, that's it, it's too late, we're too late, it's done. The carer clearly thought, that's it, it's too late, it's done. And it was Shannon stepping in and going, bag him, we're getting this done, shouting at people, getting stuff done, shouting at me to get out the room, get the kids out the room, and obviously I'm just there in shock, like, come on kids, let's go make some Weetabix.
You were coming in and out of the room being like, is what's going on? I was like, get out the room, I'm dealing with this right now, get out. And you
call the ambulance. I've called the ambulance, I'm on the phone to them, I don't know what to say.
Oh my God, even the ambulance were like absolutely oblivious. They're like, is he breathing? He's on a tracheostomy. It's like, is he breathing?
No,
do CPR? It's like, just let us do these steps first, and then we'll do CPR.
Like,
and it was just...
The guy on the other end of the phone was like, I don't understand what this child's going on, I don't understand. Because I don't even think he knew the medical terms you were using, because they're not that common. It's like, I don't think he understood what a tracheostomy was, I don't think he understood what you meant by bag. Well, I think he knew what bagging was, but I don't think he understood why you were bagging him instead of just doing CPR.
There was just steps. I knew what was the cause. It wasn't a cardiac failure, it was a respiratory failure. So my mind went to, his heart hasn't stopped, it's respiratory, we need to get those breaths back. It may have led to a cardiac, it would have led to a cardiac. That's why we got the defibrillator. But he got back that he came back to us, and we were there quick enough within seconds, because I remember the doctor, how he explained it to me was, Leo was at the top of this point of this mountain, and he was nearly going to be at that point of the no return point. You got him just before he dropped, where you can't bring him back. Yeah. You got him just with a matter of seconds. And it was just, that was one bad experience, I would say, with a carer. But moving forward from that, what I've learned is we're all human. We all do mistakes.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I think it's time to point out some of the more light-hearted mistakes carers make, just to bring us to the room. So I used to have this problem with this particular carer, and they were all right, but we did have to get rid of them in the end. So the first issue was they would always press the bell in the middle of the night, and it'd be over silly things. Like one night, she just didn't know where the spare trackie box was. The bell is 100% only for, we may need an ambulance, it's hit the fan, we need to act now. So you press that bell, and we are up in I get down the stairs in 10 seconds, and Shannon's just behind me. You know, we're up, we're done, we're there. But yeah, it'd be things like, oh yeah, I was just wondering if you'd do suction. It's like, what? It's 2 a.m. in the morning, and this carer, I think she just, well, do you know what? I don't care. They're gone. She just wanted somebody to, chat to in the middle of the night. It's like, you're on a night shift. We don't want to chat. We got a whole day ahead of us. We're not here to talk to you. It would be do suction. It would be, I don't know where the trackie box is. It's it's where it always is.
But at the same time, when carers do handover, when the evening staff and the night staff do handover at 9:30, they're meant to check. So their checks is check the trackie box, check the bag. And so at 9:30, that night staff should have done those checks before we went to bed. So what that night staff should have said is, I can't find the trackie box. Right.
Not wait till 2 a.m.
Yeah, well, yeah. Wait, Shannon, before you go to bed, where's the trackie box? But that wasn't done. So obviously that person didn't do the checks.
That's minor negligence in itself.
Yeah, it's all those.
Another event I had with this carer, which really just pushed me over the edges. I sometimes do a little bit of home brewing, so I make a little bit of home wine, and I had a fair sized batch on the go. So it was bubbling away. It was doing its thing. Anyone who hasn't brewed before, basically it releases a small amount of gas as it's sort of the yeast turns the sugars into alcohol. Totally harmless, especially in a well ventilated room. Our kitchen is a fair size. So she came in one night. She'd been to the Pride parades in the daytime, and I think she'd had a drink. Can't prove that, but that was my sort of gut feeling. But she was sober, and she seemed to be on the ball. Anyway, at first, she's talking oh, when it's done, can I have a bottle? Can I have a taste? And I'm like, yeah, probably. Then anyway, middle of the night, she leaves. She basically calls up the office and says, yeah, I can't stay. The gas is releasing. It's a danger to our health. It's a danger to Leo's health. I need to leave. She's just absolutely ridiculous.
Even office knew it was ridiculous.
Yeah, they knew it was ridiculous, but they let her go. She was feeling ill. The smell was making her ill. I mean, when she came in, the smell was nice, and she wanted to try some.
Yeah, it was only because you said no. She saw her arse. Yeah. That's when she raised it, because you said, "Oh no, you have to pay for it. It's for customers." Well,
at the time, I was trying to set up a business that didn't work out, but
yeah.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, so basically, she left, and we then had to do the night shift at 1 o'clock in the morning. That means we don't sleep. I mean, I don't generally start to fall asleep until about 12, so we've had about an hour's sleep at best. So yeah, she's left in the middle of shift. We're stuck doing a night shift, so we're not going to sleep. I'm taking the next day off work, which is going to affect our income. There's a lot of negative impacts to this. Mm-hmm. So, our head of our care team then had to go and ask a brewery what the health dangers are of this gas and how much it would take to be a health danger. And the brewery literally said, you would need to be making billions of gallons in an enclosed space with no ventilation to actually be a danger to public health. The idea that somebody in their kitchen or their house could create enough of this gas to kill somebody or affect their health or make them ill is beyond ridiculous.
Yeah. So we've had those type of encounters with the care staff, but I want to talk on the positives as well. I mean, if it wasn't for the care team that we had, they are such an also emotional support that I could sometimes, when Graham would be at work, I would have someone to vent to, someone to talk to, and you know, it does get quite lonely, and I'd say the care team have been that supportive, and you get some committed care team who genuinely love the person that they're caring for, the child that needs it. They genuinely love the family, they love the job, they're so passionate and compassionate, and you do get that, and it does make things a lot easier and nicer and pleasant. I mean, we've had lovely days out and lovely experiences with some carers. One care, we did an evening walk with my friend, and it was night time. I was like, you know what, Leo needs to live a little, let's get his wheelchair, we'll go out on a woodland walk. And this carer was absolutely terrified of the dark, so we found it later. I was like, do you want to go? He's like, fine, I'll drive us down there, but I'm scared. And we took this pair.
Without saying too much about this carer, I want to point out that
brilliant.
He is brilliant, but he's like, I'm 6'3" and he's at least my height. He's well built, he's
handsome man,
good looking.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks like he could handle himself.
Yeah.
I'd be afraid to meet him in a dark alleyway. He is the jumpiest one. I'll come through the door in the middle of the night and he'll jump and almost hit the ceiling. It's hilarious.
He was amazing. He's a lovely guy. But we took him into this tunnel. It's like a bat cave around Bromborough, and it's really dark. I've got this on camera as well because it's hilarious.
We're not going to share.
I'm not going to share that, but it's for my own laughs. But we were going in the tunnel, and he was like proper going, I'm going, Shannon, I'm going to panic. We need to leave. Leo was loving it. He was laughing. Because every time I turned the camera on his face, Leo was smiling and being like, this is absolutely hilarious. He stepped on a twig and screamed in the tunnel. I was like, what was that? Ah! And it was just like, oh mate, it's just a twig. He was like, I want to go back, Shannon, I want to go back. And as we were making our way back, we actually got lost in the woods. So me and this carer was trying to go back to the car park, but it was pitch black in the woods, and we were like, oh my god, we can't see. We hit branches, so Leo would be like bouncing away in the wheelchair, but he'd be laughing his head off. And we get back, obviously, and we were home safe and fine, but it was just those type of nice experiences and the positives of the care team that you both also get to share, as well as the carer gets to share with the child. You also, there's positives with the care team, and I will say it is a brilliant support. I mean, I don't want to go too negative on them, because it was, the main big ones was a long time ago, and we do have small little niggle issues with them now, still to this day, but it's nothing that we can't deal with.
Sometimes it's like just internal sort of like, don't want to say bitching, but it is. I mean, trying not to swear in
drama. Just drama and
just
gossip, and that's, you get that everywhere.
Personality clashes within the team.
Again, they see it as a workplace, it's our home. They sometimes find that hard to differentiate, and they do try not to drag the parents in it, but in the past we've experienced that we do get sort of dragged into it.
Yeah.
But again, on a plus note, we do have these lovely experience with these carers, and it's been at such a good hand, and even they've bonded with the siblings, and they encourage,
Oh yeah, I mean, Eric's got his unwilling girlfriend.
Don't be so mean. That carer feels very awkward that he says that. But
Eric's 4, and this woman plays cars with him and stuff, and Eric's like, she's my girlfriend.
I think, but he means friend.
Yeah, he means
she's
friend.
A girl, but we take the mick out of it.
We take the mick out of it because she feels awkward. It's just funny.
But she banters back.
Yeah.
Don't worry. It's not that. But all in all, to the question of life living with the care team and life even living without,
better with than without. It's
been difficult, and we have had really hard moments where it's been like,
there's no way we could do this, because we would never have the time together to do this if you were on night shift all the time and I was on day shift.
And even enjoy Leah. We wouldn't be able to enjoy Leah. I'd be too tired to.
Well, he'd have no quality of life. Yeah. I mean, that's the most important thing, is having them allows us to give him a quality of life.
But what is scary is the Wirral is the only area, an organisation, that has this type of 24-hour care package. And what I'm hearing in like St Helens or a bit further away is that there's none of our care team, which just makes me go, oh my god! We are grateful and we are lucky. And,
I think as a country it's something we need to push out further beyond just the one sort of little
constituency. It's just but again, this is what we need to I was going to say something.
I think we've said what we need to say. we've had a moan, and we've said the positives.
Yeah, I want to see the positives. Like, there's a lot more happier memories. There's a lot more happier memories than we've only expressed one, but there are a lot more happier memories. It's just I can't get it out in one day because, again, there's a limit to this podcast.
And obviously, if you guys have any questions about any particular things we've mentioned or have come up, any of the subjects, we'd be happy to do further podcasts on them.
Or if you've missed out, or if you want, we would be able to share your story as well on the podcast if you feel comfortable with it, or if you want to also join in on the podcast, you can as well, because I've had someone also leave a feedback on their experience with doctors as well, with how they were ignored, and it took they basically took too long, and there was something wrong, and it could have again risked their child's life, which, you know.
Plus, the more people talking about this sort of stuff, the more positive change could happen.
Yeah, I mean, like how we talk about the carers again. There's no guidebook on anyone prepping us up. This is what it's going to be like living with carers all the time, 24 hours, 7 days a week. No one's prepped us up, so there's none of that type of support of what to deal with. And
I mean, prior to moving in with Shannon, I was the kind of person who liked to just walk around in their underwear. That's had to change a little bit.
Yeah, you can't do that anymore.
You know, I mean,
traumatise some carers.
I think I came down with just me jogging bottoms on once, and everyone was like, because they couldn't see my legs because of where Leo's bed was, they was like, "Oh my god, are you naked?" I'm like, "No, I've got pants on. I'm in my house. I've just had a shower." And it was a really hot morning. I didn't want to put a t-shirt on.
Yeah.
You know, but there was just this total reaction where they genuinely, Shannon and the carer thought I was definitely naked. I'm like, no, I didn't just walk down here with my balls out.
Hello, I'm naked. But there was some time as well where you do the dishes and you take your top off and some of the carers go, "Ooh," and back away. And I'm like, right, he's just washing the dish. He doesn't want to get water
I don't
on
like
his
getting
top.
my t-shirt wet, so I always take my t-shirt off when I wash the dishes. Just weird little habits like that, which suddenly become obvious once you're around carers. Whereas prior, I was just like, my house, I'll just walk around topless all day.
Yeah, it's really awkward.
No, I don't care.
It's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all the care team. We're all. I see them as to an extent family, but obviously keep that boundary of professionalism. But
yeah, I think sometimes you let that boundary fall a bit.
I do, and that's why I struggled for the past few years with trying to figure out that myself and not getting too close. And that's what
it's a very fine line to balance.
Definitely. I mean,
obviously, if anyone is facing this where they're going to be living with carers, they are things they can ask us directly, and any questions you have, we'll try our best to answer. Right, well, thank you very much. This has been episode 2. We'll be releasing every week on a Wednesday. Eventually, we'll get round to my story. We're going to do a few more episodes on Shannon.
On the background of the situation with the ex, because honestly that was traumatic in itself. We're
going to lead this up to where we meet and then go from there on how our life is now a bit more.
In a more positive note, because ever since all those hardships, we've now blossomed into a positive family dynamic. Well, we've come out stronger out of our... Considering when people hear our life stories, people turn around and go, "Oh my god, how the hell are you still function after what both of you have just endured?" And
I mean, a lot of people wonder how I stay in full-time work, and I've got to be honest, that's something I've struggled with recently, and I've had to go on to antidepressants because trying to balance life with Leo and life with full-time work has become difficult for me. So I'm currently on the path of finding out where that leads to me now.
Yeah.
But I'll get onto that later on.
And you've got the full support of me to help you through that. You're not alone, and, you know, males' mental health is also just as important as the females'
family's mental health. We all need to look after each other.
Yeah.
Let's finish up there. Thank you. See you soon.